Hello and welcome back to Rock Cycle. Hope you're having a good day. Today we're going to be talking about arguably the most diverse, interesting and annoyingly unpredictable stage there is at Reading and Leeds Festival, and that is of course the Radio 1 stage. Poor, look at this, 2 videos 2 days in a row. That is a bit of a surprise for Rock Cycle. Please don't get used to this. Well, hopefully it's 2 days in a row. We'll just have to see how lazy I am with editing. But yeah, there was lots of support on the last video. I really enjoyed talking to you guys in the comments. Got a lot of comments and a lot of likes, and I do really appreciate that. So a big thank you. And if you didn't happen to see that video, what we're currently doing on the channel is going through every stage at Reading and Leeds Festival, talking about who might be headlining it. Well, at least as many of the stages that I'm able to get through realistically before the announcement. At some point this week, hopefully. I don't actually know when that's going to be. I don't know if there's been an update since I recorded this, but if there has, I'll leave it down in the description or comments. Now, the Radio 1 stage, I think, is one of the hardest stages to predict because not only is there a much bigger pool of artists at that sort of mid-level size which could headline the Radio 1 stage, you also get a big variety in the size of acts that can headline it. Sometimes you get really big acts that really surprise me that are on there, such as Bastille and Diplo recently, but then sometimes you get a much smaller act that has a really strong dedicated following, such as Wolf Alice or Yumi at 6. But generally speaking, the acts are kind of equivalent to between sub-headlining and fourth down on the main stage. So we're going to be having a look through 10 possible acts that could headline it. I mean, really there's a lot more acts that I could be talking about here, but I wanted to keep it kind of concise, so kept it down to about 10. Let me know if there's any other possibilities or rumours that you're interested in down in the comments, and I'll respond to them with what I think about that. Now again, like the last video and the rest of the videos in this series, these are all none of this is fact, of course, so don't go buying a ticket or whatever. I just want to clarify, but it is based on rumours, information, and sort of just my general knowledge of the festival and looking at who's touring, who's got a new album, etc. So there's a lot of reasons behind these predictions, but it's not set in stone. So anyway, that's enough of the intro. Let's get into the acts, and number 1 I'm going to say is Brockhampton. Now, these guys last played the festival about midway through the Radio 1 stage in 2018, if I remember correctly. And while they weren't a particularly high build-up name on the festival posters and whatever, they were one of the most hyped up acts that weekend. I saw a lot of people saying they were really excited to see them, and I think they fully packed out the tent, even though they were only on at about mid-afternoon time. So a lot of people loved them, and Brockhampton have said in interviews that Reading and Leeds was one of their favourite shows to do. I know every act says that when they're playing there, and we all know it's a bit of BS, but we all go along with it and cheer anyway. But when you say in an interview later on, I think that's sort of a much stronger sign that it's actually true. But since they played midway through the day, they've had an album or 2, I'm pretty sure, so I think that growth really justifies them being bumped up to the headline slot. Now, some people are doubting Brockhampton being there because they're doing a UK tour in March, but March is a good few months away from August, so I think that's enough of a gap for people who love them to see them in March and still want to see them again in August. And if they did really enjoy playing at the festival, I think they would happily make an exclusive trip over to the UK just to do Reading and Leeds Festival when they're not doing a tour or whatever. At number 2, we have Sam Fender. Now, he really exploded onto the indie scene last year with his number 1 debut album. And despite only having 1 album, he's already gained a massive following. He really fits the kind of classic Reading and Leeds act that they like to have there, so I think there's a very good chance we're going to see him there. But I probably should have said this at the start, but one of the reasons it's also hard to predict the Radio 1 stage is all the acts that could headline it could also happily play on the main stage, and I think having Sam Fender play main stage before Liam Gallagher would be very popular. Now, Sam Fender does only have 1 full-length album, and I would say that makes it a bit hard for him to do such a long slot that you'd get in the headline set, because he doesn't have that much material to pad out like an hour-long set or maybe more. But then again, we have seen people headline the Radio 1 stage with only 1 album, such as Dave last year. At number 3, we have Slow Tie. Now, it was at the festival there last year, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see a return again this year, as he's really blown up recently with his Mercury Award-winning album. And that album did seem to go a bit under the radar at first. It got a lot of love and appreciation a bit after its first release, I think. While he isn't the biggest artist, I do think he's one of those ones that's certainly on his way to becoming a very big artist, and at the moment he does have a very strong, dedicated following, so while he's not super massive, I think he would definitely pack out a tent. He does currently have no festivals as of yet for this year, so maybe he's just doing Reading and Leeds, perhaps he's just not doing any festivals at all, but I'd be quite surprised by that, so I'm sure we're going to see him doing some festival at the UK, and he hasn't been announced for any others as of yet. Now at number 4, I think I'm probably lost count by now, we have Run the Jewels. They did play the Radio 1 stage not that long ago. I think they're about third or fourth down, but their old school style hip hop has really gained quite a big following. They are being heavily rumoured to be at the festival in some way this year, and it does seem to be they've announced a few different festivals around Europe and America, so I think it'd be quite interesting to see if they are going to do a festival in the UK, and if they are going to do a festival in the UK, I think Reading and Leeds is the most likely. Now we have Pale Waves. Now they did play the festival as well last year, but they have a new album out pretty soon after this video's up, and I think it's going to continue their rapid growth that the band has had. They're really riding the wave led by the 1975 with this sort of alternative synth pop indie rock, which is becoming very popular at the moment. So I'm sure a lot of fans of that sort of genre would be very happy to see them have a high up slot at the festival. Now I do think currently they're not quite big enough to headline the stage, but it may depend on how much faith Reading and Leeds puts in their next album. I'm sure the album will be successful, just depends how successful and whether it's good enough to justify headlining the second stage. Now I'm going to say Chasing Status. I think that there's a very strong chance we're going to have a dance act headlining the 10, because you don't really get dance acts high up on the main stage anymore, and to be honest I think that's for the best, because dance acts tend to rely a lot more on the lighting, the lasers and all the pyrotechnics and that sort of stuff, and that really works a lot better in the 10. It adds to the atmosphere and the feeling, and I think a lot of that's lost on the main stage unless it's done in the dark. Now Chase and Status are on the festival circuit this summer around the time of Reading and Leeds. In fact, they're even doing Creamfields, which is the same weekend as Reading and Leeds. But perhaps how the dates work out, they could potentially do both festivals within one weekend. Which I can't remember who, but I'm pretty sure a few acts have done that in the past. It looks like maybe from them we could get a Return to the Jungle DJ set, as they seem to be continuing that into this year, but it could play in a variety of forms. Could be a DJ set, could be live, who knows with them. Now I'm going to be a bit cheeky and going to do a 3-for-1, because when I was writing my notes for these 3 bands I put the exact same description down, and that is Bombay Bicycle Club, Cage the Elephant and Vampire Weekend. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit all the photos over here, but I'll manage that in editing. Now these are 3 classic throwback indie bands from the late noughties and early 2010s, all looking to make a bit of a return to the scene this year. I do think a classic good fun indie band headlining the Radio 1 stage would be the perfect act to counter having a rap headliner, which we will most likely have this year. Now perhaps for these bands, especially Vampire Weekend, they may be a bit too big to headline the Radio 110, but that being said, Bastille headlined it last year, so I guess anything's possible. Again, all 3 of Cage the Elephant, Bombay Bicycle Club and Vampire Weekend I think would work really well, also on the main stage playing before Liam Gallagher on that day at the festival. Now at number 8, I think I've entirely lost track, is Idols. Now by conventional methods of how big a band is, by maybe like Spotify listeners, how well they do in the charts, etc., Idols aren't big enough to play or headline the Radio 1 stage. But these guys get a massive crowd live. They really are really hyped up, and for some reason that hasn't really translated into high streams and charting success, but these guys have a massive dedicated following. Me and many other people were really surprised that they didn't actually play the festival last year when they were a really hot act at the time, and a lot of people were very disappointed and annoyed that they weren't booked for the festival. But it looks like they may be putting new music out soon, so I think they'll definitely be at the festival this summer. Again, I think these could easily be second or third up on the main stage or headlining the Radio 110. It would also be fun to have a bit of a heavier band in there for a change, and definitely a punk act, so I can't remember at least a punk act headlining the Radio 1 stage in years. Now the penultimate act is Rex Orange County. Now Rex Orange County may be a bit too much of a singer-songwriter style music that doesn't really fit the typical Leeds Festival demographic, but I think he sort of fits into this wave of new alternative pop music that they're adding to the festival, although that doesn't take up too much space on the lineup as of yet. Now I hadn't heard of this guy only a couple of months ago, but since then he seems to have become a really popular act. He's really blown up, he's got a lot of support, and he's on the festival circuit next year, so I think there's a good chance we're going to see him come over and play at Reading and Leeds Festival. And last but by no means least is Lizzo. Now arguably Lizzo is big enough to be a headliner, but I don't think she would be, because I think she fits into the kind of act like Billie Eilish, Charlie XCX, Mabel, Sigrid, this sort of alternative female pop which they're having at the festival. And while these acts would all be massive at a pop festival, and some of them could arguably headline a festival, they don't have that much following in the Reading and Leeds Festival fans demographic. so that sort of justifies having them at a lower slot. Lizzo is a really popular artist at the moment. She fits into the kind of zeitgeist style acts they want to get in, and she also has quite a bit of history at the festival, and she's played there quite a few times in the past, which I didn't realise. The festival's been supporting her and putting her on the Radio 1's extra stage low down for quite a few years, well before she was a big household name that she is today. So I think that does help make her a bit more likely that she's got a strong history with the festival. She currently has no UK shows at the moment, but I think at the moment when she's so popular and so hot, she's got to come over here and do something. And if she's going to do a festival, I don't think she's going to do Glastonbury 2 years in a row, so I think she's going to come do Reading and Leeds. And I think Lizzo being there would be an instant ticket bought for people for the day just to come and see her who wouldn't normally be going to the festival otherwise. So yeah, there's 10 or so acts that I think could headline the Radio 1 stage at the festival this year. And maybe if they're not headlining the Radio 1 stage, they'll be playing on the main stage about 3rd or 4th or 2nd down. Again, there's lots of other acts being rumoured to play this slot, so if you want to talk about them down in the comments, let me know what you think. As always, hope you enjoyed watching. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's rockcycle with a double underscore, and I think it's the same on Instagram, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, share, subscribe, the usual YouTube shit, you know it by now. Maybe even ring the bell if you're feeling extra confident today.